Okay, so we've got these beautiful dales and hills views, and you can go for whichever one you fancy. You can put as little or as much or as much drawing in to start with as you want, but make sure it's really nice and light. Because the thing with watercolors is, some of these light colors can show. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to mix up these two images here because I love these rolling hills, but I like this wall at the front. So I'm just going to put maybe just peeking over that view there, but with all this rolling landscape in the back here. So I'm just going to pop a little bit of an uneven, I'll make mine a little bit darker actually, a bit of an uneven wall, just so I know where it's going to come to. When I actually do this wall, I'm going to make it nice, really nice and loose. So it'll be far looser than these bits that I'm drawing on at the moment. Because I'm going to try and keep all of the work in the background very loose, and then tighten up the last bits on the wall just by using this pen to sketch with. And then obviously there's the hills. This morning when I demonstrated this in large, I didn't put any marks, but I'm going to do it so that people can see what it looks like with the marks on. So I'm just popping these undulating hills in here. I love this feel of all these, these lovely hills. But you don't actually have to do any drawing at all if you feel you don't want to do that. I'm just popping this in. It's just helpful if you're not sure where all the shadows go and you want to kind of show what's happening. Then I'm just going to sketch in some of these little hills here. But as I said, you can do this actually without. If you feel like you just want to pop colour in all along the way, you can just literally just do that. I'm going to get this middle section in here. It's obviously a bit more in the distance there, isn't it? We've got these fabulous brights hitting the hillside and then all the shadow areas as well. But of course you can mix it up a bit, just because there's one colour in here doesn't mean to say you can't mix things up a little bit and pop some other colours in, things in that you'd like to put in. You can change the composition if you're a piece of artwork. Like here, I'm just going to pop that in. There's a few little trees. Few little trees here behind this wall. But the trees will go on last anyway. This is not massively accurate. I just want to get a sense of these hills in there, so I'm just going to do that. Right. And that's it. As I said, sometimes I'll just put like a couple of marks in like that one, and then just get all of those shapes in. But I want to keep it nice and loose. So what we're thinking about when we're working like this is I tend to work top down. But you can work in sections. To be honest, it doesn't really matter. The one thing I probably will avoid though is putting on, like a yellow straight next to a blue whilst it's wet, because what will happen is those colours will bleed into each other, and we'll get blue and yellow mixed together, and it'll end up with a green sky. So that's really typical of what can happen. So I'm just going to kind of get this sky and let that dry. And then I'll start to think of another section. The beautiful thing about working with fields and things is you can literally see each of the sections separately and work on that and let those dry in between. And then start on another section if you want to. I'm starting just getting the sky in because I'd like to place over the top, the hills and everything. but you could all, if you wanted to, leave your sky till last. I'm being a bit more practical again because I'm left-handed, and also I can't turn this round, but you could turn yours round if it's easier. The other thing you can do as well is if you're doing one with quite a lot of sky, like this one, this Muka Barnes, is you can tilt your board up slightly and bring that colour down and let it wash down a little bit. And that kind of like helps the flow, stops us getting patchy bits in the sky. But if you're doing any sky that's you want to continue and you don't want to stop, you need to mix up enough paint to start with for it. So I'm going to do that. So again, just look at what you've got. You might have a really huge selection of watercolour to choose from, and then we can just kind of mix things along. I'm just actually looking at where are my brushes? They are here. Okay, a minute ago anyway. Where are they? Oh, there they are. Just over there. Yeah, so I'm going to have a few different ones. I've got a big flat, which is great for doing kind of big sections. I can use that on its side. I'm going to go in with have a big round as well because I like to drag the colour along with the point of the tip. Or you could use a dagger even for that as well. So that's like a curved one. And that's an extra one. I didn't ask anyone to put that in the kit. I'm just showing you. If you had something like that at home and you thought, what's this for? You could have a go with that. And I might just have another round as well. It's a slightly smaller one, just so we can move some of those colours and pop those down. And so the key for me with this line and wash is to keep it really washy. I'm going to experiment and explore with where the water's going, where the colours are going to go. But I still need to work light to dark so I keep those nice colours fresh. And I'm going to go quite vivid. So if I don't want it vivid, I need to water it down with plenty of water. But if you're wanting it to be quite vivid, then you need a lot more pigment. If I just bring this down a little bit. Step down here. So there's a couple of tones in here. So I've got ultramarine. I might have a tiny bit of ultramarine in there. So I've got tubes here, but I've also got a pan set where where the little squares are, which I absolutely love. And with a pan, you just have to kind of get a little bit more up. You've got tubes, the colours, the pigment is very strong, so you need really tiny amounts of that. I'm also going to go with a bit of cerulean blue, not because it's there, but because I really like it. But you could use, you could use all sorts of colours. You could use some, Payne's grey. You can even bring in a little bit of a much lighter, kind of warmer colour down the bottom here. So I'm just going to mix that up and see what it's like. I've got my tester paper because I do like to test quite a bit when I'm using watercolours. What that's going to look like. I think it's quite difficult to see the pigment. So I'm going to start with slightly darker at the top and get lighter towards the horizon. I need to decide, or I'm going to mix full amount up if I like it or not. Okay. Quite cerulean colour, but I do like that. I'm going to put some warmer colours in. I don't mind. So I'm going to thin it down a bit, but because I'm working darker to lighter, I'll just drop a bit more dark colour in if I want it darker. Plenty of water. Let's see what that's quite watered down. Yes, that's much more. And then as I go down towards the horizon, I'm just going to add a bit more. It's a little bit difficult on here because I've only got a small section of sky. Okay. And then all I'm going to do, you can use a flat if you've got space. Mine's paper's a little bit small. I'm just going to start just really loosely. You can also wet your paper first as well. But what the key is keeping it moving, keeping it down. Add a little bit more water to this mix as I go downwards. So it gets lighter towards the horizon. And then you just use the tip of your brush to pull paint round. And then you shouldn't end up with any kind of marks that are cauliflowers, they call them, where they kind of dry together. But whilst it's still very wet, this is where I'll just drop a bit more into the top. It's just slightly darker at the top there. I'm not too worried about it cauliflowering yet because it's still quite damp. But again, as well, it's just learning that what the capacity is for your paper. Sometimes the paper will make funny marks because you can't put any more water. You know, it's reached the capacity of how much water it will take. All the papers are different there. Yeah. And just decide, do you want to drop any more in or not? And again, it's up to you. So if you start lighter anyway, it gives you an idea of how much you want to build it up. Sometimes it's better to start slightly lighter and build up those colours. So here I'm not really worried about it kind of this colour running into the bottom because I want that kind of effect anyway so that you can see there's the skies, you know, it could be almost misty, couldn't it? Now if you wanted to put another colour in there, so for example, you know, this one here has got a lot of very similar tones. Wouldn't, you know, you wouldn't be too worried about dropping some colours in there. Again, but you'll have to decide how dry do you want it to be before you drop anything in. Because they're all a very similar tone, all this area here. Now, if you've got completely opposites, you've got yellows on here and purples here, you'd have to be a bit more careful. So I'm looking at, you know, this sky here is a bit lighter towards that horizon now. Don't know. Sometimes you can take a bit out as well. So you just get a nice clean brush. So I'll wash my brush out. If I want to take anything out of there, just lift it out onto a bit of tissue. And that, so that I've got a bit more of a light coloured horizon. But it'll get eventually get to get too kind of damp. And then I'm just going to let that be and let that kind of work together and run into the colour. Now, obviously, when I start this bit, well, I say obviously it's not that obvious, but I'm going to let this dry a bit at the top because I don't actually want these, you want to keep these nice colours at the top crisp and not muddy the colours because it's opposite colours, but warm greens and then cool blues. That will get all kind of grey and muddy. So I want to reserve that. So what we're doing then is we're thinking about, you know, what section can we complete next? What do we want to do? And you can take any section and work, you know, lights and darks and things around it. So I'm just going in with, so what I'm trying to think about whenever I'm doing this is, first of all, the greens. What kinds of greens have we got? Now, if you've only got one or two in your kit, that'll be a bit different. So I've got, this one's a very blue green, forest green. It's got a lot of blue tones in it. And then I've got a yellow green here. The phthalo green light. So that's the other one. I'll pop that there. But they're so different. They're quite common colours to get in a kit. But what I can do with these colours is I can actually add in, you know, kinds of like rarely colours. I can just put these other colours on their own. I can go with some bright yellows, or I can mix a bit of the green with it, and as well as going really dark with this phthalo green. So I'm going to get some couple of yellows out with it and see how I'm going to use that. So I think I'll bring a bit of yellow here. I'll move my palette up. And another yellow, which is slightly warmer yellow. And I'm going to bring this colour, which I think is a burnt sienna, isn't it? Yeah, burnt sienna, because I'm loving those kinds of oranges that I'm seeing. But you could go in with a bright orange as well. So I'm just going to pop all of these over this side. Let's have a look. What have we got? It's like a vermilion, it's like a yellowy, orangey colour. Reddy orange. So got all of these different colours down here. So there's not, it's kind of what you would get in a kit, where you get a couple, but you may have loads of others, so that's fine. And then I want to think about, what kinds of colours I've got further down here. That's nearly, you see, that's dry. So this is the other thing, it's just testing your own paper and working out what's gonna move in and what's not gonna move in. So I might just give it another minute anyway. So now I'm going to decide, which of these colours I'm going to go in with. Well, you know what? I might actually just go in with these really real pops of yellow and these yellow, other yellowy greens and these yellowy, like orangey greens as well. So I'm going to mix up a few colours like that and just decide. I'll test them as well. If I move it that way, that might be easier. So let's do that. So let's see. So I can water this down so thinly that there's hardly any pigment on it if I want to, and use it like that, and that's absolutely fine. Or I can bring in some vibrancy into it and put lots more pigment in. I'm taking bits out all the time. Let's put more pigment in, but I can even load it up more than that. So let's mix up quite a bit of this because I'm going to be using that colour as a base for quite a few things. Because I can see some quite bright vividy greens over here as well. And then we'll mix up some of these yellows, these yellow brights here and decide which yellow it is. So we can often just test, as we have been, and decide, what kind of a yellow is it? Is it a lemon yellow? Is it really acidic? Or is it more like a cadmium yellow, which is warmer? I'm going to go for the warm one because I just like that. This one over here is almost kind of blending into something else as well, isn't it? So I'm going to mix up some of this. Add some water to that, just with my flat brush, to be fair. Sorry, my round brush. So depending on the size, I mean, if you've gone to A3 size, you'll need to mix up quite a lot to make sure that you can kind of get things to move in and blend a bit. And it's knowing, the biggest mistake, well, not mistake, but the biggest difficulty we have sometimes is we don't mix quite enough up, and then you're like, oh no. And then you go back and it's dried a bit, and it doesn't matter. We learn that through actually making the error, really. I'm going to bring some of this lemon yellow in, I think, on the top of that. And then I'm looking at these lovely colours in here as well. Well, we have got some greens in there, but we've also got these kind of browny, reddy greens. So I'm going to try bringing a little bit over here of not just give a bit of space up on here on this palette, just give it a bit of a tidy up so I've got more space. But be careful we don't mix in those tones. I want to give it a go. So I've just got burnt sienna here, but as I said, you can go in with brighter pops if you want to. That's nice. And then, I may even just add a bit of this green. It's still a warm palette, this. But I may decide it's not actually, because it's going to give us a very mossy green when we add, those kinds of colours to a green. We'll see. I might pop that in. Mix up a bit of that. So this is how, if I'm doing this, it's just a lot of trial and error as I'm going with each painting. Bit of that green, bit of brown. And it may well be I go in with a real pop of a contrast in here with a bit of this burnt sienna colour separately, so it does pop. I may even in places put a pop of orange even. So I don't really know. I'm just going to sit plate layer and see what's happening. Let's try that. Quite bright actually, but maybe I don't want to go so bright. But there isn't really a right or wrong way of doing it. It's just to do with how you're feeling on the evening or day about the colours that you're using, really. Right, so I think that that's probably going to be okay there. So I may, whilst I'm doing this, we'll just work on this top section to start with because it's very sectional because it's quite dark in the middle there. So I would be happy to work on this top section as long as that is dry. So I'm going to go in with these lighter colours now. Lighter, brighter colours. So I'm seeing, so I'm using some of these bases to try where I'm going in with these brighter ones. And this is where, we start kind of dropping the colours in a bit. So I'm going to work quite quickly. It's where the colours feel like they are bleeding into a little bit, into each other a little bit. So I want to just experiment with that a little bit and explore that. So I'm just adding colours nearish to each other, but I may well start to drop them a bit near each other and see what effect that has or overlap one with the other. Because they're warm colours together, it's not going to be too much of an issue if they do spread. See, these are spreading into each other here. So it's deciding, how much do I let this dry? This is quite bright over here. How much do I let it dry before I now add those greens in? So this is definitely, this is part of the trial and error thing. I'm going with a bit here. So that's quite bright at the moment. Underneath, on the really bright yellow. So it depends, I'd say, on how much you are happy for these colours to kind of run together. I'll leave it a little minute. I'm just looking and thinking about the colours I want to pop in. There's only a few bits on there that I feel are really bright. Maybe something over the top here in between where that's kind of stupid. So I'm just going to drop a bit. I'm going to see what it's like. I'm going to drop a bit in the top there. Okay, so that's really running in now. It's running too much. So if that happens, you can just lift it back out a bit and then wait a little bit until it's dried enough underneath that you can kind of add some more colour that you want. And I would be inclined there to add a bit of a mossier colour as well using this green. So I've just got to decide, how close can I get? When am I ready for that to kind of meet in the middle? And take the risk with it. And that's okay. I feel like I want that to blend a little bit so that, we've got kind of not too many patches or anything. So I've gone in with that very mossy coloured one. And then because it's really dark in certain places, and I'll just add that and drop that in when I'm ready, when it's dried off a bit more. So it's just, we're just being a bit tentative with it, really, I would say. You know, looking at where we don't mind it blending and where we do. I'll try another bit of this here. You can push it anyway with your brush along and see what happens. This one's a bit more dry over here. And again, it's just how much you want it to keep separate and how much you want it to run. And then where the watercolor decides it's going, even when you think all is well. So we've just got to go for it, really, to be honest. So there's bigger shadows underneath here. I'm feeling the shadows are under there. But I'm just still just working around that a little bit, so that we've getting that kind of blended effect that I want in there. Probably going in over the top now with if there's any big bright bits I want to go in with, I'm just going to do that as well. Get a couple of those brights in there because they will go over a little bit because there's more it's more heavily pigmented. But again, it's deciding when is the right time to drop that in. And we don't always know. Just have a go, see if it's dry enough, etc. What you can do, but it's really lovely when you start moving that colour around and actually trying to get it to run. It's lovely. Really kind of a nice experience. I'm just taking a bit of care under that yellow. See whether it decides it's going to mix in a little bit there, but we'll see. Cooling a bit there, but again, you can move it around or you can just lift it off a little bit if it feels too intense. And then we're looking at the other colours that we can see in there. I'm just going to drop a little bit more of that colour in. So I've got really wet on this paper at the moment. Now I'm going to start to look at this really dark colour here as well, this forest green. Just start to compare what that's going to be like there, where the shadows are, because these are the tones I've got here to use. So I've got to decide, is it going to run too much if I put it in? Can I control it, or I'm going to have to wait a bit? And I think the answer is going to have to wait because it's starting to kind of spread out a little bit more than I want it to there already. So I'm going to have to wait until it's a bit more dry to pop that in. Sometimes you want a nice clear shadow line, it's quite, you want it to be a bit of a harder line like up here. But again, that's quite dry there. So I'll just wash my brush off. And we're just working our way down there like that. So you could always, do this section separately. So what I could do is while I'm waiting for that top bit to dry, for example, I could then start to look at the lighter colours in this second section here, which is what I think I'm going to do. I'm going to take a bit of forest green, that's lighter, and a bit of this green, and just see if that's the colour that I'm wanting to get. Or some of the colours that are kind of creeping into the hillside here that are just slightly lighter. Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. So I'm looking more what I'm going to do before I put in as much deeper foresty green in there. And at some point, we just hope that it will all just blend together beautifully. And you know what? It might and it might not. We'll have to see. These brighter bits in. Okay, pull out these colours, getting brighter and kind of creeping up the side of the bank here. So I'm just popping those in. And then we've got this real strip of bright, but I'm kind of making this into two sections here. Just getting all its light areas that are within there before I go in with the real dark ones, basically. Dropping in this nice bright one here. I might make that more intense as well as time goes. So I'm looking at this now. Still got a finger mark in there. Look where I've just done that. Seeing if this top bit now is dark enough to drop in my really dark forest green colour there. We'll see. Again, it's just about being a bit tentative to start with. We can only try this out and see what happens. Okay, so it's feeling a bit better now. Now it may start to run into these lighter colours underneath. And again, it's just about deciding if we can pull it back, if it's too wet to do that, or if it's okay. The thing is with this, we're trying to get it to feel like a rolling landscape, and the colours will merge a bit, but this is less worrying when it's, you know, not worrying, but it's less kind of dramatic. Because the colours are all greens, they will naturally kind of landscape will blend into each other. But it doesn't feel quite as bad if it starts to go into the other colour. It's more the top colours we're trying to reserve. And I think that is still quite wet, so I'm gonna this will be a trial. I may need to make that a bit drier at the top again. But I'm going to still work around these greens that I've just laid down here. And build those up. It's a really, really relaxing process though. And again, how dark you go is entirely up to you. Some people like a big, strong contrast and others don't. So that'll be a bit of a trial and error. I'm going to go for quite a strong one. So here I'm putting more pigment on um, because I want quite a strongish line there, actually. But yeah, I'm a bit nervous about this top bit, whether it's going to run in or not, and I'm just going to have to go for it shortly. Won't it? Will it run in? Won't it run in? And some bits will be easy because they'll be, the bits that are further away that we've let dry. Will be drying. Come on. Keep dropping bits in as well. If it wanted, if you wanted some to be a bit darker, just keep dropping patches in. Yeah, I haven't added any more water to the page on this one because I think the colours are very close to one another in terms of tones here. A bit of water off there. So I'm just dropping some yellows in, which is the opposite way of doing it, I know. I've just realised I've missed a bit of that out there. So I'll just drop it in while it's damp. And then we can just keep working down really, and then going back, and if you want to darken anything, you can darken it when you find that the time is right to darken it. So I'm actually going to combine a bit of this dark forest green here for over this side, um, underneath, and a bit of this reddy brown as well. I may go in with a nice yellow on the top as well. So some of mine is bleeding into the other colours a little bit, and I'm okay with that. I'm all right with that. The hardest thing is to is actually to let go and let it do it. Because sometimes it can have a really nice effect with it. Sometimes it does just go everywhere and you think, oh, crikey. But you can always just do that, but just pull it back a bit, pull some of the water out, stop it moving as much. So let's get a bit more of this lovely orangey red, orangey colour, yellowy colour up here. It's very bright. And again, you know, how much do you want to let it dry before you go in with those tones? You want it to run a bit or not at all. You can then pick up like quite a bit of pigment on your actual brush as well. Just going with almost, you know, not dry, but much less on it. That's another thing that you can add in. Put a lot less water on that. Just going to soften this area down with my brush. Just kind of move it about a bit. So I'm kind of just almost mixing it together a bit. And then continuing to get the shadowy ones in where I want a really much darker shadow. I could keep doing that, darkening those areas. That's kind of one of the last bits we'll do. Yeah, you can wait till the whole thing's dry if you want, but if you wanted it to blend a tidgy bit, where you get a really dark area as well, you know, where the shadow is particularly, you might want a much stronger line and you might want to drop in some really dark colours between those. That helps create that depth as well. But at the end of the day, this is our creative interpretation of what we see happening, which is good. It would be very boring if we were all the same, wouldn't it? Incredibly boring. I'm just weaving in some shadows here that are slightly different to the other shadows. These ones have got a bit of red brown, reddy brown in them, forest green and forest green and burnt sienna. And then I'm actually going to pop some extra brights in just because I like them. Here. There's nothing to stop you doing that. You think I just love those pops of colours, and just by all means pop them in. Doesn't have to be exact. And then just continuing on, I'll add a bit more forest green in this, so it's a slightly darker green. But it's quite vibrant, so I might put some of this lemon yellow in it as well as a bit of forest green. See what that is. Yeah, I quite like that. Yeah, I'm going quite bright on these watercolours. I've got this bit in here. There's a bit more reddy brown there, so I'm going to add a bit of that. Whilst I'm moving it round, we're just dropping a few colours in that we like as well, like, you know, a few tones. Drop in a bit more. Really much dark green in there now. forest green. And creating these multi-layers. It's almost like you want to keep going. Very refreshingly lovely though, isn't it? Bringing in some of these brighter tones in. Lots of different colours. And it's a little bit of a play between, getting your light colours in, bright colours in first, but also keeping the kind of rhythm going with the paint so that we kind of applying these multi-layers and keeping the where we want it to blend, keeping that going as well. So this bit here, I'm just going to I will add a little bit more very vibrant yellow to this in a moment. Joins a bit on. A lot of fun there, that's for sure. Mm, yeah, sometimes you've got to drag one colour out, drag another in. And then, getting that nice contrast of the really dark things on. We do need, I think contrast works well. Even if your contrast isn't really bright with watercolours, because if you've got more muted colours and then really watered down, then naturally you're going to put less really, really big, strong contrast in. But if you've got bright vivid colours, you can make that contrast quite strong. So this now is all getting a little bit too blendy, so I'm just going to let that dry for a bit now and just pop a little bit more in. Just take a pause because I feel like sometimes when you take a pause, it's got to be the right moment in your painting so that it all doesn't start to dry and you don't get the lines in, but also, that you want to get in what you need to get in before as well. So just take a pause there and see how you're getting on. Okay, so we're just continuing kind of down to where we want to go with this. Let me see where my brush is. I've had to move my colours a bit. Might be able to just fit them back on down here somewhere. Let's see if I can just swap to where the wall comes to probably. Yeah, so we're just kind of going on like that. Obviously, there's lots of trees in here. So you could put a base underneath if you want to, or you can actually just work your trees in a minute. They're quite a bit darker, so that'd be easier. So I'm just going to continue getting some of these lovely banks and things in with those layers, building them up. Go from lighter to darker where you can, and if you can't, that's fine. This feels a tidgy bit a bit warmer here, so I'm going with a drop in a little bit of vermilion orange into my colours here. It's quite bright actually, isn't it? I quite like it. So I'm gonna drop it in. And then having a little look at some of these greens as well that are around it. I'm going with a lighter green first, and then I can just add the darker over the top. So we just keep working away, dropping these lovely colours in. Popping in some darker shadows when we feel we can. Oh, making everything a bit darker. Taking out any colours that you want to as well. But if there's any way you want to go back into and just make a bit darker now it's a bit more dry, then do that. Sometimes helps us um, the different parts of the landscape. Continue dropping in where you want it to blend a bit. I'm just tightening up a few things here. Still washy, but I'm just popping a few little colours back, areas back in, making them slightly darker. And then I'm going to start just popping in a few little trees and things before I move on to putting this wall in the front here. I'm going to join my wall so there's not a gap as well. So it's just kind of peeking over. So we're looking at the different colours of the trees here. So again, we tend to go in with some of the some of those brighter ones, but also I'm looking, it's really dark here. So I've got a mixture of kind of what I feel like is reddy brown colours in here, and just really dark, almost burnt umber, which is like a really dark brown. So pull a bit of that out. I may even add a little bit of forest green to make some of those areas even darker with the brown. But then I'm going to have a little look at almost some kind of orangey pinky tones in there. So I'm going to use a bit of this vermilion and a bit of the yellow that I've got left as well, I think there. And going with that to start with. So let's mix a bit of the right up. So I'm just looking at where we've got. I'm just going to pop that in, even if it doesn't match up perfectly, because I can find out where to pop some of these as we're going through. So I even adding a couple of bits and pieces up there. Down here. Even adding just a tiny bit of red in the middle of these actually, just so I get a it'll look a bit intense now, but obviously I'm working some of these shadows around here. Yeah. And then I'm just going to I might stick with the same brush actually. I'll go a bit smaller. So now I'm going to start to drop in some really dark ones. So I'm going to start to drop in actually some of the greens with some of that brown. Oops, actually that's the brown. Pop a bit of this light green in there. Just so I've got a bit of contrast and you can see. And I'm just making some tree shapes with the top of my brush here, because they're kind of, you can only see the tree tops, can't we? So I'm just putting those on like that. And these are the ones that have got a little bit of green in, but they're still quite dark. You can just do all sorts of tapping motions and things. This is where it'll start to transform a bit, and it goes from being, oh my gosh, I'm really not keen on it, to, oh yeah, I can start to see some of those shapes now. And then I'm going to go in with some much darker ones to get some of the other, pretty much the brown ones now, just on their own. Just in between. I've not got it too watery at this point. Just dropping those in. in amongst there. So we don't have too much detail because obviously they're a little bit in the distance. We're just giving a sense that, you know, there are some little trees and things in there. As well. And then we can go even darker by adding forest green. Let's see now. Which is which? Adding those two colours together that are dark. And we're kind of bringing an even darker element to it. So we're creating a bit of a multi-layer just by putting in a few tones in here and dropping those over the top. Get the sense of treetops and things like that. And you can put in anything you want, you know, from that you can just go, okay, I'm going to put in a bit more of a brighter colour or a yellow or a green. Maybe a bit more lit up. Not really picking up at the moment on my computer screen because it's so wet, but it will do in a minute when it's dry. So yes, that's what we're doing. So, you know, if you want to go back in and make any of it darker or whatever, you can do. Or, you know, maybe you wanted to drop in something a bit brighter that you couldn't drop in earlier, you can do that as well. Any vibrant ones. And then I just in a few, dropping a few lighter bits in. And I'm not trying to cover it, I'm just trying to add just the tops of a few lighter areas there in those trees. Okay, so I'm going to move that aside for the moment and have a little look at this fence, this area here, which is just so I could demonstrate a little bit of a dry stone wall and how we can get a pen in there really. So I'm just going to change my water over as well because I'm going to go into a much lighter palette here. And I'm also going to switch my palettes, my paints over to a different one. This is a pan. So these are my pan colours here. I've just done it for ease really, so I've got a bit of space as well to paint on. So what I'm looking for here is I'm wanting to keep it nice and loose, like in the background here. So I'm just going to look at lots of different kinds of different tones of stone. So I'm going to go in. So this is where I am going to use my white as well. Actually, a bit of white in there. I'll look at some that are a bit grey toned, some that are a bit sand toned. So we've got these are the warmer ones. I've got a bit of yellow ochre in that. I want enough mixed up that I can kind of dot it across this painting. So it's how warm you go is entirely up to you. And then some quite dark areas here. So I'm going to go in with some more brown tones there. But I'm going to try and just take out the warmth a little bit by adding some green. So those are for over kind of more over this side, so there's a bit more of a contrast. So I'm going to let my pen and do the talking there rather than the than the detail of the paint. There we go. So that's a bit darker. Then I want some kind of greyish tones in there. You can literally just do a white and a black if you want to, or you can use Payne's grey. You can also go in with some kind of bluish tones as well. So you can use some blue, watered down. So I've got all of these, I'm getting all of these ready. Kind of water those down a little bit. And all I'm going to do is going to go in and just kind of across here, just make some different blocks of shapes intermittently. And I'm not actually worried too much at this point, because it wants to be very loose, about the exact shapes I'm making, because I'm going to use my pen to do that. Just going to get these, just kind of some general shapes. You can mix it up a little bit. The key for me is just to get some of these shapes in. You can go brighter if you feel, you want some more brightness in that wall, because the rest of your painting is, if it feels like there's not enough kind of depth to it, then by all means go in and create a little bit more of a darker colour in there. And drop in some of these other different tones. I'm going to start over here where it's much darker on this side. So I'm just kind of creating some little slabs of shape really at the moment. Let's go a bit darker over there though. And again, it maybe you have to not drop them in so quickly. Over this side. And then I'm just going to drop in some of these these grey tones as well. And there is a bit of overlap because I'm not really too worried, because I'm going to use my pen to put in the gaps between them and the shapes. So we are we are a bit out of control with this. It's fine because we can put some of the shapes back in when we actually come to use the pen. Drop a couple of blue tones in. And I'm leaving some gaps because there are some light areas on these bricks as well. So I want to make sure I'm capturing a bit of the lightness in there. If you haven't got any gaps, just lift it out with a clean brush. I'll lift a few out where I've got a lot of overlap and no light areas. And then I'm going to go a little bit darker in this corner. Any kind of real bits that are feeling quite a bit darker in here. I'm just going to drop a couple in before I go in with my pen. So it's very loose. This is the bit, you know, where you think, oh gosh, what could happen? But again, we'll put it back in with a brush, so don't worry too much. And I am letting that bleed a little bit in because I think it's quite a nice effect. So just going to go for it. Mm. I'm going to let that dry a minute because I don't think I'm going to be able to do much with this with my pen if it's too wet. But when that started to dry, then I'm going to go in with my pen and do a little bit of the line, which is where we can just kind of put a little bit of sketching in there. And the line bit isn't for everyone. Sometimes you might do something and you love it as it is, then you don't want to put the line in, and that's absolutely fine. It's a, you know, when it emerges over time, what your preferences are. But then, um, but and again, with the sketching side of it, you your sketching style sometimes just emerges from there. So if I bring this over here, you know, I could do, you know, just start with small amounts of sketching on there. Mine's really kind of like have lots of very fat little lines, wiggly lines. I'm not very neat and precise. Some people's is much neater. So the style of yours, let's just let it come out. So to start with a few bits, things like walls or walls of houses, sometimes foliage is a good place to start. I'm going to start obviously with the wall. Hoping that'll dry in a mo. It's been more, oh, it's drying already in the middle. Let's start over this side. So what you can do, for example, is if you're not sure where to start, you could start with, you know, some of the gaps that need to be in that you want to put in the shadow. Then I might just think, okay, I want to pop some little gaps where you know, some of the plate, somewhere of some of the shadows. I'm not going to put it around everything either. But I'm just going to pick out some shapes, make some shapes up as well. Move them along, make some of them longer. And you just start with a few bits. And then as you build it up, your hand will just take over the situation really. You can just start to pull in Um, some of these areas. So we're almost making our own shapes around, it doesn't even have to be exactly where a shadow is. And it just starts to build up and build up. And I do believe that this sketching style comes over time, so when you first do the first one, it takes a bit of time. If you're sketching all the time and drawing all the time, um, you'll already have a sketching style as such, but if you're not doing a lot, then it's something that you just need to kind of keep having a go at, and eventually it will come. And it's also kind of having that it's okay to just do squiggles. It doesn't have to be this perfect, but then for some people it is perfect, like a really precise style. And again, that is equally valid. It's just experimenting, seeing what comes out, and then as it comes on, going with the flow and seeing how it goes, really. And you could just do a little bit of it. You can do a lot. You can use thicker pens. You can use thin ones. This is just like a rollerball pen, really, a gel pen. Right, I'm just going to take a pause there and just see how you're getting on. Yeah, so you can just keep going like that. Do as much as you want or as little. Make some of those gaps a bit bigger as well if you want to. Make put a bit more, put a little bit more contrast in there. If you used a heavy contrast one at the top, just put some squiggles between. Just keep going. See what comes out. And you can always decide, next time I don't want as much of that in, or I do. You're the artist, you can decide. Much as you want to pop in and as much as you don't want to pop in, really. Until you're happy with all those squiggles. There you go. I think I will just probably leave that there for tonight. And then if I felt like doing another, I'll just move my pen over. Let's take the tape off. I think when you've got the tape, it always looks like a nicely framed. And she get it off. Just pulling the tape off without pulling the surface of the paper off is sometimes the most difficult thing. With some nice little line and wash with a bit of a loose landscape in there. Bit of a one of two halves, painting of two halves, just so we can illustrate how to kind of get that bit in there. I mean, you can always go into the painting if you want and just pop a little bit of, you know, something in there with the foliage. If you wanted to kind of bring in that throughout the painting, or you can just leave it. You know, there's no rules here. You make your own rules when it comes to your artwork, which is very important, isn't it? Get the enjoyment out of it. Okay, well, it's been lovely. I hope you've enjoyed that and it's been helpful.